Yo, what's going on guys? RISET here, Happy New Year, and today I want to talk about some of the most anticipated games of 2022, at least hopefully. I mean, if last year's anything to go by, then there's a chance that some of these games might not even make it into this year, but as far as we're aware, then this list includes lots of games slated for this year that I'm super looking forward to. Of course, I can never include every single game in this list, but I picked 20 games, I was going to do 10, and there were just too many to talk about. So here's 20 of the most anticipated games for this year. Let me know in the comments down below which games are on your most anticipated list. Are there any that I didn't include here? Of course, if you guys do enjoy this video, a like would be super appreciated. Don't forget to sub, because this of course is to be a good year for games, so there's gonna be a lot of stuff on the channel. But anyway, let's not waste any time. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. So, first game on the list is Horizon Forbidden West, launching on the 18th of February. February, of course, is a very busy time. This, of course, continues Aloy's story, her journey across the uncharted lands. She'll, of course, encounter hostile regions ravaged by massive storms and occupied by dangerous enemies, deadly machines. And, of course, she also discovers a vast array of environments, ecosystems, lush valleys, all that good stuff. The map in Horizon Forbidden West is much larger than the previous game. It's filled with secrets that lie beneath the ruins. The game's going to feature a multitude of recognizable locations, including places like San Francisco, and of course various different biomes as well. And one of the main additions in this sequel, of course, is underwater exploration. I'm just hoping that it actually plays really well. Honestly, I don't really like underwater in any video game. But anyway, that aside, the game will of course also feature enhanced melee combat. We've seen some of that stuff shown recently. We've done videos on that. You can check that out over on the channel. There's a revamped climbing mechanics, there's a grappling hook, there's a glider. Basically, lots of great ways to explore the environment. If you guys played the first one, you'll know it is a fantastic title, and I cannot wait to explore this world. Moving on from there to game number 2, Monster Hunter Rise SUNBREAK. Of course, it's Monster Hunter. You know it was going to be on this list. I'm just incredibly excited, and of course, admittedly, right now there is still not a great deal of information out there, but we've played Monster Hunter before. We kind of know what to expect. Monster Hunter Rise was a fantastic game, and while yes, admittedly, it might not have had all the support and all the content everyone had hoped for, it still fundamentally has fantastic foundations, incredible combat, incredible mechanics. So we know that, of course, expanding that with a G rank, a master rank expansion means more quests, more monsters, more Silkbind moves, basically more of what we love in, of course, seemingly a new setting. There's a lot of sort of gothic themes from what we've seen so far, so basically just more Monster Hunter. I'm looking forward to this. This is slated for summer 2022, and it's safe to say we're going to be doing a lot of stuff on the channel. Following on from there, we have Elden Ring on the 25th of February. Yo, this game is gonna be so good. I am super looking forward to this. As somebody that has developed a love for Soulsborne style games over the recent years, this is definitely one of my most anticipated games of this entire year. Haven't had a chance to go hands-on with the network test last year. This, of course, plays incredibly well. The open world aspect of it gives you areas to explore, mysteries to uncover, the fact that, of course, no matter where you go, everywhere you're rewarded. You go off the beaten track, you find a cave, you lead somewhere, you get a weapon. Basically, this is one of those games in a very similar manner to Breath of the Wild where exploration is rewarded. You go somewhere and there's going to be cool stuff. It's not going to be one of those dead open worlds where you wander somewhere and then you just see a tree and you wander back. No, this game will reward you for that, but of course it's also going to be punishingly difficult like you would expect from Souls games. Plenty of fantastic bosses, plenty of deaths await you. Honestly, it looks like it takes some of the best stuff from Dark Souls, Sekiro, and just other Soulsborne titles in general, throws it into a semi-open world and gives us a fantastic recipe. Following on from there, we of course have God of War Ragnarok, which is currently TBC for this year. Of course, it is slated for 2022. We just don't have a window right now, so hopefully end of the year, because of course, you guys know Kratos is not only my fitness inspiration, I'm trying to be this guy, but of course I also love my Norse mythology, and this continues the saga. This takes place 3 years after the events of the previous game. Fimbulwinter is drawing to a close, and of course it's prophesied that Ragnarok will begin once it comes to an end. We of course now have teenage Atreus, still kind of reeling from the revelations of the previous game, and he is seeking answers about his identity, as well as of course a way to prevent Ragnarok from happening. Of course, to uncover the truth, Kratos and Atreus set out on another journey, and they of course go in search of the Norse god of war Tyr, who was previously believed to be dead. So basically, expanding on the world we had before, we get to explore the realms that were previously inaccessible, we get to retrace some of our steps, new combat mechanics, new enemies to fight, basically more of what you loved, but mainly it's a way to close out this story. They have confirmed this will wrap up the Norse mythology arc, so whatever happens in this, it's going to be big. Moving on from there, we have Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, again TBC for 2022 at some point this year. But this game is set in the universe previously established by the Batman Arkham series. It takes place sometime after the events of Batman Arkham Knight. Amanda Waller has of course created a task force known as the Suicide Squad, I'm sure you guys know this, which is composed of Harley Quinn, Captain Boomerang, Deadshot, and King Shark, Shotgun playing as King Shark. Of course, it is a 4-person co-op game. If you want to, you can of course play on your own if you would prefer, but you can play this co-op with friends, and they head out on a covert mission to Metropolis. When they're there, they find out that Brainiac has invaded Earth and basically started brainwashing its inhabitants, including the Justice League members Superman, Flash, and Green Lantern, and Wonder Woman, which is basically a recipe for disaster, so it's our job to stop them. The idea of kind of jumping in with like a co-op shooter with some homies in this kind of world is just going to be fun. Next one on the list, of course, Little Devil Inside. This one, maybe not everyone's cup of tea, but honestly, I really like this one. This game visually is just awesome. I love the kind of artistic direction of this one. This is third-person action-adventure role-playing game that basically has light survival elements. Combat set in open world. However, the developers have said that the game's survival elements are rather easy, so don't kind of think of it as like your hardcore survival game. It's more so to kind of suit the narrative of the game. The idea much more in Little Devil Inside is about the journey, the environment, sort of taking it all in as you go. You basically go on like a big trip for your sort of mission and you explore the world. Some of the sort of survival elements include things like getting water from cacti or chopping wood to make a fire, cooking food obtained from hunting, that sort of stuff. The game takes place across multiple different locations with environmental conditions, including deserts, snow, forests, mountains, that kind of thing. The areas are of course connected by a world map, which uses tilt shift effects to kind of create this sort of miniature scale appearance that we saw at the end of last year from a PlayStation showcase. And of course, the overworld map forms a part of the exploration as well. But honestly, this is a game that I've been kind of watching ever since they announced it, and I'm very much looking forward to going hands-on later this year. Next on the list, one for the Borderlands fans out there, we have Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, slated for the 25th of March. This, of course, is a game where players can create their own playable characters for once. You're not playing as pre-made Vault Hunters, you instead get to create your own classes. The game features 6 different character classes, and for the first time, you can also mix and match the skills from these characters. The playable avatars also have stats which can be upgraded using hero points, and you have a large arsenal of weapons and firearms at your disposal. And again, for the first time in the series, players can also wield melee weapons. I mean, unless of course you include Krieg, but that aside, this is a bigger focus this time around. Melee weapons are of course not going to be the primary option, but in a much more sort of Dungeons and Dragons style, you'll be juggling guns, weapons, and magic. The game features the same procedurally generated loot system from Borderlands, of course, which is capable of generating hundreds, thousands, millions of combinations of weapons and gear. You can also cast different magical spells, summon meteors, transform enemies into sheep, lots of stuff like that. Basically, it's kind of like if you like Borderlands and you like Dungeons and Dragons or those kind of RPGs, then it looks kind of cool. Honestly, from the gameplay they've shown so far, it looks fun. It's just more of what we had before. It doesn't look drastically different to, say, Borderlands 3, but I had some fun playing that game, so I'm kind of looking forward to jumping into this. Moving on from there, we then have DNF Duel, of course, the fighting game that Arc System Works are working on, and this, of course, is the Dungeon Fighter franchise. Again, I've said this in previous videos, Dungeon Fighter is not a series that I personally have experience with outside of looking forward to both this game and Project Barbecue, but I am, of course, someone that is familiar with Arc System Works fighting games, and I do love them. Whether it be Dragon Ball FighterZ, Grand Blue, Guilty Gear, anything like that, they are incredible when it comes to both the actual input, the combat, and also just the visuals. And DNF, or Dungeon Fighter, is of course a series with some fantastic characters, some fantastic classes, and speaking to people that of course have played the game or the series, there are around sort of 25 different characters or classes to choose from. Quite whether they dip into all of those in the fighting game will of course remain to be seen, but it's safe to say there's a lot of stuff to choose from. The trailer we've seen so far features things like the Berserker, the Ranger, the Inquisitor, the Grappler, amongst others as well. It looks fantastic from what they've shown so far. I do want to see some extended gameplay, but this one I'm really looking forward to. Then one for the Destiny fans, of course. This is not technically a new game per se, but it is the next installment in the Destiny franchise, and that is Destiny 2's Witch Queen expansion. 22nd of February for this one. This expansion centers on Savathun, who along with her siblings Oryx, of course the Taken King, and Xivu Arath, the God of War, lead the Hive. The Hive follow the sword logic, which is of course a religious belief that living beings can only justify their existence to live through combat. A tenet that is of course diametrically opposite to that of the Light, the Traveler, and those who have allied with it. Of course, as an expansion, expansion. If you guys have played Destiny expansions before, you kind of know what to expect. More stuff, more raid, dungeon, all that kind of stuff. But a couple of exciting things about the Witch Queen expansion. You of course get to fight Savathun's Lucent Brood, who are hive warriors that actually carry the power of the light this time around, which is going to be pretty cool, basically like fighting hive guardians. And they're also introducing a new weapon type, the glaive, which will have both melee and short range attacks as well as defensive capabilities. And of course the game is also going to introduce a weapon crafting system, allowing players to customize a weapon to their playstyle and to sort of shift the weapon with the game's changing meta. Definitely exciting if you guys are still into Destiny. Then moving on from there to Pokemon Legends Arceus, of course, January 28th, one of the earliest games we'll be playing this year. This, of course, is the next installment in the Pokemon franchise, but it is very different to your traditional experience. While it does preserve the core gameplay of the past entries in the series, this game takes place in a bygone era of Sinnoh region's history, where it's known as the Hisui region, and it takes place long before the events of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, hence the remakes late last year. It's stated that the objective of the game would be to create Hisui's first Pokedex. The mythical Pokemon Arceus will of course play a major role in the story, and players can now capture Pokemon directly in the overworld immediately without going through battle, and can of course engage in battle by releasing Pokemon that they have previously captured near a wild Pokemon. For the first time in the series, you can of course also take direct damage from Pokemon, so it's kind of like Monster Hunter mixed with Pokemon. Admittedly, you're not carving up the Pokemon to make some armor out of them, but that aside, it looks quite interesting. It's got a very different structure to it, kind of going out on missions, selecting kind of objectives, hence the sort of Monster Hunter comparison, and then of course still building, capturing the Pokedex. Honestly, I still need to kind of like play this one to really get a feel for it, because honestly, I'm interested. I just don't know yet whether I'm completely sold, but it is different enough to make me want to dive in, so I am super looking forward to playing that later this month. Then, for those of you guys looking for the next big Bethesda adventure, we of course have Starfield, supposedly 11th of November this year. If that actually happens, I mean, I'm going to be surprised, but regardless, supposedly 11th November 2022. This is set in an area that extends outward from the solar system from approximately 50 light years, called the Settled Systems. Around the year 2310, the two largest factions in the game, the United Colonies and the Freestar Collective, engaged in the Bloody Colony War. The game takes place 20 years after the event of the Colony War, in which the major factions enjoy an uneasy peace, and you as the player assume the role of a customizable character who is a member of Constellation, an organization of space explorers. The game can be played both in first or third-person perspectives, and basically it's your chance for a space adventure. Not much more is known right now, but this is definitely all eyes on this one, and this of course is coming to Xbox and PC, because don't forget that Xbox have now acquired Bethesda, so unfortunately this one will not be coming to PlayStation. Then next on the list, of course, it wouldn't be an anticipated list without The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. You guys are probably like, yo, where's this game? Trust me, it was going in this list. I just didn't want to put it too early because you guys probably saw it coming. This is my most anticipated game of this entire year. If ever there's a Zelda game in a year, nothing even comes close for me. Zelda Breath of the Wild is one of my all-time favorite games. It is second to me to Ocarina of Time. I love that game above all else, but Breath of the Wild was a fantastic experience. I loved every minute of it. I sunk hundreds of hours into that game, exploring every corner, completing all the quests, everything about it, and a chance to go back and explore that world and continue that story. I cannot wait. From the stuff we've seen so far, the gameplay trailers, or the teaser trailers, should we say, there's definitely some interesting story theories coming up. Of course, we do see seemingly two different versions of Link, this kind of like tattooed version, which is definitely very curious. I am excited to sort of see where that will go narratively speaking, but the fact that you of course have elements of the environment that have risen up to basically create caverns and dungeons below. They have of course said that this is going to be a darker game. They've also said that of course some of the stuff that was missing from the original one we will probably see present this time around, meaning maybe more traditional dungeons, items from those dungeons, other things like that, things that of course are staples in the Zelda series. I just can't wait to see it, because honestly, Breath of the Wild was a fantastic game, but if they work in some of the more traditional Zelda elements as well, we could potentially have the best Zelda game we've ever had. I know that's a bold claim to say, I'm going to stand by it. Return to this video, or return to my comment when the game comes out, and we'll see where we stand. Following on from there, we then have Gotham Knights, again slated for this year. The game is set in Gotham City after the deaths of both Bruce Wayne and Police Commissioner James Gordon, which has resulted in a rise of crime. Players then assume the role of Batman's former proteges. You either have Dick Grayson, Nightwing, Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, Tim Drake, Robin, or Jason Todd, Red Hood, as they attempt to basically continue the legacy and protect Gotham. This one, similar sort of way to Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, only this one is just 2-player co-op. Again, gameplay very sort of reminiscent of the Arkham series. But this one, you can of course explore the game, again, on your own if you want, or you can bring in someone else and you can then take on the role of these different characters, work through your missions, take people out in stealth, level up your characters, all that kind of progression, looking pretty exciting. Then one for the zombie fans out there, Dying Light 2, slated for the 4th of February. Of course, this is the next installment in the Dying Light franchise. If you guys haven't played Dying Light before, it's a survival horror action role-playing game. I always describe it as zombies meets parkour because honestly, I'm not really a zombie guy, but Dying Light, the movement in this game, the way that you kind of like traverse the environment has always been quite fun because it kind of is like a parkour system. So Dying Light 2, I am actually quite excited to sort of see how it plays out. The game is set in the city, it's a massive open urban environment, and the map is 4 times bigger than the original game this time around, broken into several districts and regions, each of which has their own landmarks. When exploring the city, you can of course scavenge different scraps and resources, craft new items, new weapons, meet different factions, all that stuff whilst trying to survive. And like its predecessor, the game also features 4-player cooperative multiplayer, so you can play this with your friends. Then following on from there, we have Splatoon 3. Maybe this is one of those more niche ones, but yo, I really enjoyed Splatoon. Nintendo's take on a shooter, basically. Splatoon 3 is the next installment. This one is actually quite different to the previous ones. Of course, you know, it still maintains a lot of the core gameplay mechanics. You still have the multiplayer matches, everything you're familiar with, but this one, the main hub of the game is called Splatsville, and is actually located outside of the usual Inkopolis in a place known as the Splatlands. Think of it kind of like Mad Max Badlands, only a Splatoon version. Of course, gameplay wise, you kind of know what to expect from the previous ones, but this one does introduce new weapons and of course new gadgets, things you can mess around with in those matches, and it also has the single player campaign, and it's revealed this time around that the campaign will be titled The Return of the Mammalians, since the campaign is going to focus on the reappearance of the mammals. Then on February the 8th, we have SIFU, for any of you guys that love your martial arts films or like martial arts style games, fighting games, games with tight combat systems. This, of course, is a super exciting looking game. The premise for this one, of course, is a kung fu student needs to embark on a lifelong mission to hunt down a group of 5 assassins who brutally murdered his family. The game is set, of course, in a contemporary Chinese city and is mostly grounded in reality, though admittedly some magic does exist because you have a talisman that basically allows you to rise whenever you die. Only the catch is that when you do rise, you also get older. So this is a game that has an interesting mechanic because the combat system does its best to try and sort of encapsulate the feeling of martial arts movies, lots of sort of parries, knockbacks, knockdowns, the ability to sort of evade in different directions to sort of factor in the movement patterns of your enemies. But at the same time, you also get older as you go, meaning that eventually you're probably going to die or you complete your objective. But of course, if you do die along the way, you maintain the knowledge you've accrued along the way, meaning you can then use that to help you on your next run. Next on the list, we have Forspoken. The protagonist, of course, this time around is Frey Holland. She's a young woman who was transported from New York City into the fantasy world of Athia. Basically, it is an isekai. And in this game, you use magical powers to journey through the world, survive in order to find her way home. You have other characters that include her sentient bracelet Cuff. You have the dictator Tantasila, who is, of course, one of the main enemies. And you have various other characters you'll encounter along the way. But from the gameplay we've seen, it just looks fantastic. The world looks incredible. The movement looks super fluid. It's basically like parkouring your way through this incredible environment, and you have some fancy particle heavy abilities. I'm super looking forward to learning more about how the actual game plays out itself, but this one, very much looking forward to. Then moving on from there, continuing with the Bayonetta saga, of course. Bayonetta 3 is a game that went quiet for quite some time, but we did finally last year get a look at some new gameplay, and again, I mean look, if you like Bayonetta, you're going to like Bayonetta 3. Fair to say. In this game, mysterious life forms that appear to be neither angel nor demon attack amid the ravaged street of the Shibuya area of Tokyo, and Bayonetta, of course, makes her graceful return. Why is she in Tokyo? How far-reaching is this invasion? We're going to have to find out, but you do see some of the new gameplay elements in the trailer, like the Demon Masquerade, where Bayonetta fuses with an infernal demon to wield even more formidable magic power, and the Demon Slave ability, where Bayonetta can control infernal demons at will to obliterate enemies. It's kind of like fighting giant kaiju demons, which looks hella cool. Then the penultimate game on the list is Avatar, the Frontiers of Pandora. Admittedly, right now what we've seen is a CG trailer for this one, but of course this is the next title being worked on by Massive. It's an open world action-adventure game based on, of course, James Cameron's Avatar film series. This game is a first-person game, action-adventure, developed by Massive Entertainment, of course the studio that brought you things like Division, and it's being developed in collaboration with Lightstorm Entertainment and Disney. It's built using the latest iteration of the Snowdrop engine, which of course is a very powerful engine, so expect a very nice looking game, and it's being developed exclusively for the new generation of consoles and of course PC. The game is set to bring alive the alluring world of Pandora with its beauty and sort of danger in an immersive and open world experience. And in the story, you play as Navi and embark on a journey across the western frontier, a never before seen part of Pandora. You explore a living and reactive world inhabited by unique creatures, new characters, and again, the aim here is to push back the formidable RDA forces that threaten it. And then finally, last on the list, and the reason this is last is because we don't actually know if it's 2022. It's, on the website it says 2022, but chances are it's a Final Fantasy game. It's probably going to get pushed to 2023, but we'll see. Either way, Final Fantasy 16 looking incredibly cool. This is, look, it's Final Fantasy. You kind of know what to expect. It's an action role-playing game, and this one takes place in the world of Valisthea, where people live comfortably thanks to mountains of crystal called the Mother Crystals, and the world is controlled by 6 different factions. The main cast includes the main character known as Clive. Shout out to Clive, you got Joshua and you got Jill. Clive is of course the firstborn child of the Archduke of Rosaria, who embarks on a quest for revenge after tragic events involving the Dark Acorn Ifrit. Joshua, Clive's younger brother, is the dominant of the Acorn Phoenix and the heir of Rosaria. Think of it like the Jinchuriki of that character basically if you guys play Naruto. And Jill, the woman from the Fallen Northern Territories, is Clive and Joshua's foster sister and confidant. The gameplay of course features Clive fighting using a combination of melee-based sword attacks and magical abilities, so definitely very sort of action-driven, much more sort of real-time than your conventional like ATB system that you are familiar with in Final Fantasy, but honestly from the stuff they've shown so far it looks really cool. So there you have it. That's a look at some of the most anticipated games of 2022. What do you guys think? What on that list is on your list? What games did I not mention? And again, if you guys want to see this stuff on the channel, make sure you subscribe because basically any game I listed here, I'm going to be covering in some capacity. So keep it locked if you want to see more. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to catch more from us, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our latest uploads. And if you want somewhere to hang out, play games, or chat all things from games to anime, food to fitness, consider joining the RX Gaming Discord.